There is a silent fear that has stopped more dreams than lack of talent ever could. It has kept businesses from being started, books from being written, conversations from being spoken, and opportunities from being seized. That fear is not poverty. It is not rejection. It is not even hard work. It is the fear of failure. Think about it. How many times have you had an idea but hesitated? How many times have you wanted to step forward but stepped back instead? Not because you weren't capable, not because you weren't prepared, but because you asked yourself a dangerous question: what if I fail? That single question has buried more potential than any obstacle ever could. But today, I want to challenge the very foundation of that fear. What if failure is not the enemy you believe it to be? What if the setbacks you dread are actually the tuition you must pay for success? What if every disappointment carries within it the seed of development, discipline, and direction? The truth is this: the difference between those who achieve extraordinary results and those who live with regret is not luck, background, or even intelligence. It is interpretation. One group interprets failure as a full stop. The other interprets it as a comma. Failure is not a verdict on your worth. It is a test of your perspective. And here is why you must stay with me through this entire message. Because by the end, you will not only see failure differently, you will understand how to use it. I will show you how fear shrinks when action expands, how setbacks can become stepping stones, and how the very moments that threaten to break you can actually build you. If you master this principle, you will never look at rejection, loss, or disappointment the same way again. Instead of retreating, you will recalibrate. Instead of quitting, you will grow. And once you learn how to transform setbacks into opportunities, there will be nothing left that can permanently stop you. Failure is one of the most misunderstood words in the language of achievement. The moment something doesn't go as planned, most people stamp it with a heavy label: failure. And with that label comes emotion, embarrassment, disappointment, self-doubt. But here is the truth: failure is not a declaration, it is a diagnosis. When a doctor runs a test and the results show a problem, the test is not the tragedy, it is the information needed to correct the issue. In the same way, when your effort produces an undesirable result, it is not a verdict on your ability, it is feedback on your approach. The average person takes failure personally. The successful person takes it professionally. If a business idea collapses, the average mind says, "I'm not cut out for this." The disciplined mind says, "The strategy needs adjustment." Notice the difference. One attacks identity, the other evaluates execution. Failure becomes dangerous only when you attach it to your self-worth. You are not your results. You are the one producing results, and results can be improved. Consider this carefully: every skill you now possess was once performed poorly. There was a time when you were bad at it. Whether it was speaking confidently, managing money, learning a subject, or building relationships, you started as a beginner. If you had defined your early attempts as final judgments, you would have stopped progressing. Growth requires experimentation. Experimentation guarantees mistakes. Therefore, mistakes are not interruptions of the process. They are part of the process. The ultra-successful understand a powerful principle: progress is built on correction. They expect missteps. They anticipate recalibration. They know refinement only happens after friction. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they ask, "What is this showing me?" That question transforms frustration into instruction. Every setback contains data. Data about timing. Data about preparation. Data about mindset. If you ignore the data, you repeat the outcome. If you study the data, you improve the outcome. Failure is only final when you refuse to learn from it. And here is something even more important: fear of failure often hurts more than failure itself. The imagination exaggerates consequences. It magnifies embarrassment. It predicts disaster. But reality is rarely as severe as fear suggests. Most failures are temporary inconveniences, not lifelong catastrophes. What truly limits people is not the experience of failing, it is the anticipation of failing. When you redefine failure as feedback, you disarm fear. You begin to see each attempt as an investment in skill development. You detach your ego from the outcome and attach your focus to improvement. This shift changes everything. Instead of avoiding risk, you pursue growth. Instead of hiding mistakes, you analyze them. Instead of quitting early, you adjust intelligently. Remember this: the only people who never fail are those who never attempt anything meaningful. Safety may protect your pride, but it will also imprison your potential. If you want advancement, you must allow for error. If you want mastery, you must tolerate imperfection. If you want opportunity, you must risk discomfort. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is one of its ingredients. The moment you stop seeing it as a stopping point and start seeing it as a stepping stone, you reclaim your power. You move from emotional reaction to strategic response. You move from discouragement to development. And when that shift happens, fear loses its grip, because now every setback becomes part of your training. Failure is not final, it is formative. And that distinction can transform your entire future. Fear is a master storyteller. It paints vivid pictures of worst-case scenarios. It whispers about embarrassment, loss, rejection, and uncertainty. It magnifies risk and minimizes capability. And the longer you stand still, the louder it becomes. But here is the paradox: fear feeds on inaction. The more you think without moving, the more fear grows. The more you delay, the more intimidating the task appears. Imagination, when left unchecked, becomes a factory of exaggerated outcomes. Action, however, interrupts that cycle. You do not conquer fear by waiting for courage to arrive. You generate courage by taking action. Courage is not a feeling you wait for, it is a decision you make. Every time you act despite uncertainty, you prove something to yourself. You prove that discomfort will not control you. You prove that hesitation does not have authority over your future. You prove that fear is a sensation, not a command. Understand this clearly. Fear is physiological. Your body reacts to uncertainty as if it were danger. Your heart rate increases. Your thoughts accelerate. You feel tension. But those sensations do not mean stop. They simply mean you are stepping into growth territory. The individuals who achieve extraordinary outcomes are not fearless. They simply refuse to negotiate with fear. When faced with a difficult presentation, they prepare and deliver it anyway. When confronted with a bold opportunity, they evaluate and step forward. When launching something new, they accept imperfection and begin. Because they understand a powerful truth: momentum builds confidence. Confidence is not built in theory. It is built in repetition. The first attempt feels terrifying. The second feels uncomfortable. The third feels manageable. By the 10th attempt, what once frightened you becomes familiar. Familiarity reduces fear. Fear thrives in the unknown. Action turns the unknown into experience. Consider how this works practically. If you are afraid to start a business, begin by researching, then plan, then register. Then launch. Step reduces ambiguity. Each action replaces speculation with evidence. Small, consistent action is more powerful than rare, dramatic bursts of courage. Waiting for perfect conditions is another disguise of fear. Conditions are rarely perfect. Timing is rarely ideal. Resources are rarely complete. Those who wait for everything to align usually wait indefinitely. Progress belongs to those who move with what they have. And here is something critical: action creates clarity. Many people say, "I'll act when I'm sure." But certainty often comes after movement, not before it. You gain clarity through engagement. You refine direction through experience. If you hesitate until fear disappears, you will remain stuck. If you move while fear is present, fear gradually loses influence. Think of fear as a shadow. When you stand still, it looms large. When you walk toward the light of action, it shrinks behind you. The path to transforming setbacks into opportunities begins with movement. Even imperfect movement, even small movement. Take the call, submit the application, start the project, speak the idea. Do not wait for the trembling to stop. Act while your hands shake, because each decisive step builds internal authority. Each effort strengthens self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of resilience. When you realize that action is your greatest weapon against fear, you stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if I grow?" And that question opens doors that hesitation never could. There is a defining moment in every person's life. The moment when they stop explaining their circumstances and start owning their outcomes. That moment is the turning point. As long as you blame external forces for your setbacks, you remain powerless. Blame may feel comforting in the short term, but it quietly steals your ability to change. When the economy is the problem, when other people are the problem, when timing is the problem, you have no control. And what you cannot control, you cannot improve. Responsibility changes that equation. Taking responsibility does not mean accepting guilt for everything. It means accepting influence. It means asking, what part of this outcome belongs to me? Even if the answer is small, it is powerful because it gives you leverage. The average person says, "This happened to me." The disciplined person says, "What can I learn from this?" That shift from victimhood to ownership transforms your future. When a plan fails, responsibility asks, was my preparation sufficient? Did I execute consistently? Did I ignore warning signs? These questions are not accusations, they are tools. Blame keeps you emotionally reactive. Responsibility makes you strategically reflective. Consider this: two individuals experience the same setback. One complains about unfairness and withdraws. The other evaluates performance and adjusts. A year later, their results are dramatically different. Not because their circumstances changed, but because their response did. Responsibility is maturity in action. It requires emotional discipline. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to admit imperfection. But it also grants something invaluable: control over your trajectory. You cannot control every event. You can control your preparation, your attitude, your habits, your persistence, and your willingness to improve. And those variables over time determine outcomes. The fear of failure often intensifies when we avoid responsibility. If failure means humiliation or blame, we resist trying. But when failure becomes an opportunity for evaluation, it becomes productive. Ownership removes shame and replaces it with strategy. Instead of saying, "I'm just not good at this," you say, "I need more practice." Instead of saying, "This always happens to me," you say, "I need a different approach." Notice the empowerment in that language. Improvement becomes possible. Responsibility also builds credibility with yourself and with others. When you admit mistakes and correct them, you develop trust. You stop fearing exposure because you are actively improving. Excuses protect the ego. Responsibility develops the individual. The ultra-successful operate with a simple standard: if something goes wrong, look inward first, not to condemn, but to correct, not to criticize, but to refine. This mindset accelerates growth because it shortens the feedback loop. You do not waste time justifying poor results. You immediately begin recalibrating. And here is the profound truth: when you accept responsibility for your life, fear begins to lose its grip. Why? Because you no longer feel at the mercy of events. You recognize that while setbacks may occur, your response is always within your authority. Responsibility is not a burden, it is power. It is the moment you stop waiting for rescue and start engineering results. And when you embrace that level of ownership, setbacks stop feeling like dead ends. They become design challenges. They become lessons. They become stepping stones. That is the turning point from reacting to circumstances to directing your destiny. There are certain qualities in life that cannot be gifted, inherited, or transferred. You cannot borrow resilience from a friend. You cannot purchase discipline from a mentor. You cannot download perseverance from a book. These traits are forged slowly, repeatedly, and often painfully through setback via strength, but we rarely admire the struggle that produces it. Every setback you face is resistance, and resistance, when handled correctly, builds capacity. Just as muscles grow only when challenged by weight, character grows only when challenged by difficulty. Without tension, there is no development. Most people wish for success without strain. But success without strain produces fragility. The first obstacle breaks what has never been tested. Setbacks are tests. They test your patience when progress is slow. They test your discipline when motivation fades. They test your belief when results are invisible. And every time you endure without surrendering, something within you strengthens. Consider how adversity reshapes perspective. When you experience disappointment, you develop emotional endurance. When you face rejection, you build tolerance for discomfort. When you recover from loss, you discover internal reserves you did not know existed. Strength is revealed under pressure. If life were always smooth, you would never discover your threshold. You would never stretch beyond convenience. You would remain comfortable, and comfort rarely produces growth. The individuals who achieve lasting success often speak of failures with gratitude. Not because failure was pleasant, but because it was formative. It sharpened judgment. It clarified priorities. It eliminated illusions. Setbacks force refinement. When something collapses, you are compelled to analyze structure. When a strategy fails, you must reassess approach. When expectations are unmet, you must elevate preparation. This process deepens capability. There is also a psychological transformation that occurs through hardship. When you survive difficulty, your self-trust expands. You begin to say, "I have handled worse." That internal certainty becomes a stabilizing force in future challenges. Resilience compounds. The first setback feels overwhelming. The fifth feels manageable. The 10th feels instructive. Over time, obstacles that once intimidated you become routine problems to solve. This is why setbacks are not interruptions of progress, they are architects of maturity. And here is a critical insight: avoiding difficulty weakens you. Engaging with difficulty strengthens you. If you constantly retreat at the first sign of discomfort, you train yourself to associate challenge with danger. But if you remain engaged through adversity, you train yourself to associate challenge with growth. That conditioning determines your future ceiling. Greatness requires durability. Durability requires pressure. The key is not to romanticize struggle, but to utilize it. Do not waste difficulty. Extract its lesson. Identify the skill it is demanding. Develop the habit it is exposing. Build the mindset it is shaping. When you begin to view setbacks as conditioning rather than condemnation, your posture changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this building within me?" That question transforms frustration to fortification. Remember, easy paths rarely lead to extraordinary destinations. The path that strengthens you is the path that prepares you, and the strength built through setbacks is permanent. It becomes part of your identity. It travels with you into every future opportunity. You cannot borrow it. You must build it. But once it is built, no obstacle can easily take it away. Failure feels devastating only when your timeline is short. If you judge your entire potential based on a single moment, a single mistake, or a single season, then every setback appears permanent. But when you stretch your vision beyond today, beyond this month, beyond this year, something powerful happens. Failure shrinks. Short-term thinking magnifies disappointment. Long-term vision neutralizes it. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. When immediate results do not appear, discouragement sets in. Expectations collapse, and fear of failure intensifies. But mastery has never been built in a hurry. Every meaningful accomplishment, whether building a business, developing expertise, strengthening character, or creating financial independence, requires time, not days, not weeks, years. When you adopt a long-term perspective, you begin to understand that setbacks are not signs to quit, they are signals to adjust. A single failed attempt does not define your capability, it defines your current stage of development. Imagine judging a child learning to walk after their first fall. It would be absurd to conclude, Walking is not for you. Yet adults do this with their ambitions. One failure and they decide this is not for me. Growth demands patience. Patience does not mean passive waiting. It means persistent effort over an extended period. It means continuing to refine your approach while maintaining belief in the larger vision. The individuals who rise above fear think in horizons, not in moments. They ask, where do I want to be 5 years from now? What skills must I accumulate? What habits must I build? What lessons must I endure? They understand that temporary defeat is part of a long-term construction process. Consider the concept of compound growth. Small improvements made consistently over time produce extraordinary outcomes. But consistency requires endurance, and endurance requires perspective. When you know you are building something significant, you tolerate short-term setbacks more easily. You see them as construction noise. A long-term vision also stabilizes emotions. Instead of reacting dramatically to every win or loss, you maintain steady focus. You recognize that progress is rarely linear. There will be surges forward and steps backward. Both are normal. The fear of failure often stems from the belief that one mistake will ruin everything. But if your vision spans years, you realize something profound: you have room to recover. Time is an ally for those who persist. Another advantage of long-term thinking is strategic refinement. You are not desperate for immediate validation. You are willing to experiment, adjust, and iterate. You become more analytical and less emotional. This mindset transforms setbacks into research. Instead of saying, I failed, you say, that method didn't work. Yet, the difference lies in the word yet. It implies continuation. Long-term vision builds resilience because it attaches your identity to growth, not to outcomes. You are not chasing quick applause. You are constructing enduring capability. And when you commit to a larger timeline, fear loses urgency. Failure becomes temporary. Progress becomes cumulative. Improvement becomes inevitable. Remember this: significant results require sustained effort. Sustained effort requires belief. And belief is strengthened when your eyes are fixed not on today's disappointment, but on tomorrow's destination. Think beyond the moment. Think beyond the setback. Think beyond the current obstacle. Because when your vision is long enough, no single failure can stop you. It can only shape you.